you find that they look at the same.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Now it's time for us to take a look at some of the selected papers and what they're saying this morning. I mean, the newspaper headlines. That is the segment right now. So you're welcome. We'll start with the home front, Daily Trust. And the lead story this morning says, Anchor over planned 7 billion naira renovation of Tinubu and Shettima's residences. And you can take a look at some interesting riders here. First Lady's vehicle to gop 1.5 billion naira. Citizens, Labour Party, CSO kick. That is the second rider. And then President seeks National Assembly's nod to borrow $7.8 billion and 100 million euros. All right, take a look at this headline and the riders. Page 4 has details of that story. And then we have lots of pictures, procurement of laboratory and science equipment. More like an investigation of what's happening in Yobe State. You find that on the front page of Daily Trust, the newspaper. That's the much we can take from Daily Trust this morning. The other stories, though, you can grab a copy and look at them.
All right, we move on to the Blueprint newspaper this morning, and the headline there is coming from the minister's retreat. Tinubu to ministers, others, with performance bond, deliver or quit. With the riders, President says, my government ready to take 50 million Nigerians out of poverty. That is an audacious commitment, if you like. Hadiza Bala Usman has results delivery unit. This is like our class monitor, you know. It says nothing wrong borrowing for development. And they also have a picture there from that. This picture is coming from the budget defense. I was beginning to wonder what the INEC chairman was doing at a ministerial retreat, really. But clearly it does appear that it's coming from the supplementary budget defense, which is a practice that looks very good. In the previous past, you just said supplementary budgets and the House sits on it, and that's it. It gets approved and you move on. To other stories, World Bank spent $11 billion in Nigeria in 3 years. That's some money. That's some money. Better delivery desperately needed in Nigeria. This is coming from the UK envoy.
Yes.
Remember, we had footages of him saying they are listening to the words of the president, and they are envious of the kind of leadership we seem to have. Exactly. I hope that Nigerians can wake up someday and say, yes, we agree with some of the submissions of these foreign people, because as far as we are concerned, until we are able to comfortably afford a mudu of rice or gari or sugar, as far as we are concerned, government is not yet delivering on its mandate. And to other stories, NG 2023 conference excites corporate bodies, industry players. And the Comium as NPHCDA boss Faisal Shoaib bows out. This was quick.
It was.
And Anna confers fellowship on Pioneer Blueprint Editor-in-Chief, Shime, and 30 others. So other stories, Imo NLC President Ajero in protective custody, not arrested. We have to look at the meaning of the word protective custody.
Exactly. I think
Israel-Palestine war, experts caution Nigerians against religious crisis. Tax debt, Lagos shuts Excellence Hotel, 33 others. If you know Lagos and Ogba, you know what Excellence Hotel is, one of those revered hotels from the 80s. And Tinubu seeks Senate's approval for $7.864 billion and 100 million euros loan. This is part of the 2022 budget. Interesting time for Nigeria as a country. And that's it on the front page of Blueprint newspaper.
Let's move on to Daily Independent. Let's take a look at the masthead there. We have Labour accuses Uzodinma of abducting and brutalizing NLC president. The writers attached to this story says phones and money taken off and hospitalized in Owerri. Nothing should happen to Ajero. CSO warned Imo governor. All right, to get details of that story in the Daily Independent. coup can't happen in Nigeria, Chief of Defense Staff assures. Starting on the front page, continue reading further the newspaper. And then the lead story now, just below the Daily Independent, we have no excuses, perform or I sack you. Tinubu tells ministers, acknowledges challenges, liabilities inherited from predecessor. You can get that story in the Daily Independent. And let's go further a bit. We can see a pictorial of the NOC president, Gerald, there. And let's take this one that said Tinubu seeks Senate approval to borrow $7.864 billion and 100 million euro. Page 29 has details of that story. Governor Eno Corporate Economy Masters excited over editors conference. All right, page 29. NDIC, Customs, UBA, Axis Bank, Dangote rally support for Confab. Get details of that story on page 29. Then NGX records a historic gain crosses 70,000 point height. Page 7 has details. And then despite reconciliation, Obaseki denies a deputy official vehicle. All right, I'm just wondering if there was a reconciliation and if the apology from the deputy governor tendered to the governor was accepted in the first place. We'll get details of this story on page 7. And court restrains River lawmakers from impeaching Fubara. That's page 7 as well. I have capacity to fight back, Wike warns detractors. Caution against tampering with political structure in Rivers and says planned impeachment, not military coup, but constitutional. All right, you can say that for a lot of places elsewhere, not just in Rivers State, but read further to know what this is all about. The last story we'll be taking from the Daily Independent this morning says Tinubu's bold economic reforms resonating globally. British High Commissioner observes. Page 6 has details of that story. That's the much we can take from the front page of Daily Independent this morning.
All right, we move on to the Guardian newspaper this morning, and the major story there reads, red flag on domestic borrowing as Tinubu considers 30 trillion fresh loans. We are already sinking, as it were, and we wonder where these new borrowings would place us. It has there a picture of what it describes as Africa's domestic debt vulnerability index. To other stories, Emefiele prosecutes, don't enter into pleb again. That's an editorial. A front page editorial on The Guardian. And court restrains Rivers Assembly CJ from impeaching governor. Minister says road will gulf 18 trillion in 4 years. Seek contingency fund. And to other story, bricklayers bag life imprisonment for defiling 13-year-old girl. And endless bickering over no work, no pay rule in varsity. That's a news analysis. You'll find the details of that on page 4. And another governor bows to conscience, shuns ex-governor monthly pension. If this was some kind of over-the-counter prescription, I think it is time we serve it on all on all ex-governors in Nigeria for states that are especially bleeding from the paucity of funds. These are the major stories we will consider this morning from the Guardian newspaper. Let's
take a look at the Punch. The lead story says court stops Fubara's removal. PDP governors consult Wike. It says nobody can intimidate me. Impeachment not a coup. FCT minister insists. And then crisis will be resolved, says Fubara. PDP governors plan a Port Harcourt meeting. All right, get details of that on page 14, the Punch this morning. And above that, we have a crude shortage, delays Dangote refinery, 5 others take off. Lack of supply to Dangote shameful, says federal government. The minister blames low production. All right, page 2 and 21 has details of this story. Tinubu seeks $7.8 billion fresh loan. Get the details of that in the Punch newspaper. Then a very sad development, a pictorial of the fire that broke out in one of the markets in Lagos, and people salvaging what is left. Traders lament as fire destroys 300 shops in Lagos market. Page 4 and 5 has details of that very sad development. And the reps probe 200 billion naira spent on postponed census. Yeah, we've been wondering when this much talked about census will hold, but we haven't really gotten a lot of information about it. And my daughter's boyfriend blackmailed her to commit suicide in UK. That's coming from a father. That's really a sad one. And then tax-seeking gunmen kill 40 in Yobe attacks. Those are the stories we'll be taking from the Punch newspaper this morning.
And moving on to the Nigerian Tribune, it's been in circulation since 1949. Staying with the Wike story. Wike opens up on Rivers crisis, says nobody can take away our political structure. Impeachment is provided for in the Constitution. Fubara gets court nod, restraining House on impeachment, says nothing wrong if father and son have issues. 1 minute they are denying that there is a problem. The next minute you don't understand the words that comes out of their mouth.
True.
And we have two pictures there of Ajero. Obviously, after coming out of protective custody, and if this is what protective custody looks like, I doubt
nobody wants to go into protective
want to go in there. The police have a way of qualifying everything it does, but I don't understand wanting to protect somebody from a mob and then getting mobbed in that process. He looks a far cry of himself, clearly. To other stories, Rep issues 72 hours of ultimatum to AGF to submit reports on 100 billion COVID-19 intervention fund. Wow. And I must succeed by all means, Tinubu says, once ministers at cabinet retreat to deliver or get sacked. We hope the president walks his talk. OAU students storm EFCC over arrest of 69 of their colleagues. What were they doing? Were they arrested in the classrooms? Arrest at some point doing something illegal. And lifting forest ban or restricted items will spell doom for poultry industry. Arrest warrant court gives Emefiele January 25th to appear over 53 million debt. No, this is another angle. And FG needs 18.4 trillion to fix federal rules. After 72 hours of inactivity, Lagos Ibadan cargo train stranded at Lagos Port. Delay caused by paucity of cargoes. That is the Nigerian Railway Corporation. That's it on the front page.
So let's take a look at our last paper this morning. Business Days, the next stop. A presidential yacht, luxury cars and extra budget draw flack. All right, Tinubu seeks lawmakers not to borrow $7.91 billion. And let's take a look at this one. Nigerians devise survival tactics amid economic woes. Get details of that in the Business Day newspaper. Dubai flights to resume December as airlines trapped funds drop. That's coming from a source. An African fund managers earn less cash as investors avoid large deals. And the last one says business activity shrinks, nears Naira crunch levels. All right, I don't think that we're ready for any Naira crunch at the moment. We're talking about the dollar crunch. Well, a lot of Nigerians, a layman, would not be really bothered about that. But Naira crunch will really, really affect lots of businesses in Nigeria and even the citizens. Remember that we went through a lot recently, and I don't think Nigerians will want that. But our reviewer is here in the studio, and let's bring him in at this point. The editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper is here. Maran Nasir, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you join us.
Thank you.
Maridia was talking about that we went through a lot. I was wondering if she's out of a lot, because I'm going through a lot. And I'm not sure when that a lot is going to subside. But let's see. It appears we exit at different points. She has exited a lot already. So I know we have to go and look for palliative. We should need the rise. Yeah. All right. We start with the story of the supplementary budget. There are quite a number of things on that budget, but these other ones seem to have been eye-catching. the amount budgeted for the First Lady. I mean, that amount is good enough to provide comfort even for the president of this country. To think that we would be coughing that amount of money instead of buying scanning machines for teaching hospitals across the country. And what is even wrong with the fleet of vehicles in the presidency already? Has she been trekking since they came on board? It's one of the ways that the ordinary Nigerians have been thinking about it. And another curiosity, point of curiosity in that request is the presidential yacht. We thought that 14 air fleets is big enough, as it were,
and
bigger
even
than
the renovation of the houses. From the reports, it's for the houses in Lagos.
The last president renovated it. It's not like the entire Nigeria live in the house that exerts some kind of pressure. And what does this signpost for you, for a president who is asking Nigeria to tighten their belt, who is asking us to bear the amount of suffering we are going through, and because there's hope, somewhere ahead, to then see this kind of request at the very early stage of his government? What impression did you make of these particular budgetary items?
Well, like you rightly observed, this story came out of the 2.2 trillion budget, supplementary budget. There were other aspects to that budget, but like you said also, this is what the media centered on, because, journalists, we like to center on the things that are likely to resonate with our readers, which is fair enough, because all the details are also there. But honestly, I don't think it's something that is good for an administration that campaigned on, cost cutting, so many things, talking about prosperity and what have you. So many people will now say they are starting with the enjoyment before even the work. Like you said, also, the office of the First Lady, like so many lawyers will say, is alien to our constitution. I don't know how we came about even voting, money to run that office. I'm not saying that the office is not important. I'm not saying that we don't need it at all. But we also need to place it on a scale of preference, to see which one do we prefer. Is it to have to spend 1.5 billion just for vehicles? We don't know what other things will be consuming, like the number of aides, placed to the office and things like that. But like I said, you can't be telling Nigerians to tighten their belt, to be patient with the government, and then before you know it, you are coming up with things that from what the masses can see, honestly, smacks of enjoyment and what have you. So honestly, the government maybe should do everything. Probably start with putting the work. When the prosperity comes, maybe Nigerians will now begin to understand why we need to do things like this. As for the residents, especially the one you talked about, the one in Lagos, it has something to do with some esteem, because you are talking about Nigeria. People will want to see, a very good house, being owned by Nigeria for its leaders and things like that. Nobody wants to see a ramshackle structure, even if the president hardly uses it. That's just the problem that I have with it. We are voting money that we can take to other sectors of the economy and make more impact, than just taking it to buildings that we hardly use.
Now let's take a look at this drama ensuing from the NLC president and also, the police in Imo. At late hours of yesterday, we started hearing about, what's happening in Imo State. First of all, it started with the NLC chapter of. Let's say the chapter of NLC in Imo State saying that they are not going to go on strike, that a court has stopped them from embarking on any form of strike. And then the information about Tajero leading a protest and was abducted in court, that was the word that was used. And then the police coming out to say that, no, we saved him. And pictures resurfacing this morning with one eye closed, and there've been some sort of conflicting statement coming from the police and also the NLC president. He said, what can you make of all of this drama in Imo State concerning the NLC and the police?
Well, what we don't know for sure, it's at what point, was he brutalized? The police, they can qualify, anything. Like saying he was taken into protective custody. So many people will rather you allow them to take care of their own. Yeah, because how do you end up with a face like this? And this is a man. If it is a woman, probably some bits of makeup can cover things like this. But honestly, the police will also rethink its strategy. This idea of abducting people or arresting people or taking them into custody because some people are trying to harm them. Why don't you stop the people from harming them? Why do you have to take the receiver of the violence into custody when the others are allowed to roam freely? So the NLC, on its part, I know they also threatened to embark on strike because of that. I said, please limit that to Imo State, since it's not the whole of Nigeria that maltreated your president. But you also know, so many state governments are getting away with so many things. Like a governor will refuse to pay workers, will refuse to do things that, statutorily he's supposed to do. He will not do it, and then because maybe his state is not on the map, so to say, on the news map, he can get away literally with so many things. So this one, the president of the NLC went there to put pressure on the government so that at least all the rights of the workers will now be respected. But this is what it resulted in. So honestly, we need to rethink, the way we do certain things in this country.
One development that has been that I've taken note of in what is happening in Imo, when you juxtapose it with what happened in Rivers State, is the curious role that the police has played. We know prior to this time that we have had different people canvass for state police, and you begin to wonder how, if you begin to get a sense of how much that can be abused when you see incidences as we have seen with Ajero. However, when you look at the case of Rivers, you also see somebody in the center who has got some kind of influence using the police to go against the chief security officer of the state, and even the governor being attacked with his security aides while making his way to the National Assembly that he provides fund for. How do we find the balance that prevents this kind of rascality that we see from an institution that is ordinarily supposed to be independent?
Well, I remember one of the arguments of President Buhari. He was like never in support of the idea, of having state police. Is the fact that it can be abused. And then, if you can deny workers their salaries and then nothing happens, you can't do the same with somebody that's wielding a gun and all that. So, and I remember the former Minister of Transport also making an argument that, okay, you can abuse the state police under your control, but at least someday you are going to leave that office, so somebody will also use it against you. So there are, divergent opinion when it comes to the idea of state police. But my thinking is, from what happened in Imo State and Rivers, something is controlling the police, not outside what we expect. There should be the procedure. Sometimes the governors will tell you that, okay, I'm not like responsible for all these federal institutions. But sometimes, if they have the money or if they have the right buttons, they can do as they wish. So the police should not allow the force to be used, to be abused, by whoever is in power, because Nigerians know the police, not who is controlling the police today, because you are likely to leave that place tomorrow, and you are the one that Nigerians will hold to account. Nobody wants to leave a legacy, you know, of being controlled by outside forces like what we are seeing at the moment. We just finished talking about the police claiming that they provided somebody cover so that he will not be brutalized. And then
the person moves from cover to hospital.
And then in the case of Rivers State, you know, videos were all over the place, you know, showing direct assault on the governor. So honestly, I think the police should not allow itself to be used by anybody. As long as they do the right thing, they shouldn't worry about what the governor or the president or whoever thinks he has influence, that he can do one or two things to control their actions. They shouldn't respect all that.
Now, speaking about state governors, now we've seen how the journey, you know, has transcended from being talks to violence and now renegotiations and opening up. I'm talking about the Rivers crisis now. Now, Wike has opened up and it seems to be some kind of political structure thing. Wike is the minister of FCT, and then we have Fubara, who is now heading the affairs of Rivers State. But there's some sort of discord or disconnect between the both of them that has resulted to some sort of disagreement and you know, chaos arising from all of this matter. I'd like to get your thoughts on, you know, this latest development about Wike saying, yes, there's a hand to it, and there's something that is happening that I am not happy about. Let's get your take on that.
Well, I think Wike should understand the fact that there can not be two governors in one state at the same time.
So, but on the flip side, if it is something that you have done, and maybe you felt like something, because you like it or not, he's one of the players in, you know, Rivers State.
Yeah, he is.
And then he is somebody who has done, maybe put up a structure, a political structure, which I feel is not sacrosanct. So let's say maybe there's something that benefits the people that this same governor is trying to, you know, destabilize. I'm just saying, since Wike is not
I
here.
Understand. But, you know, politicians are nothing without structure. You know, he has his people all over the local governments, you know, so that when it comes to election, you know, he can influence, you know, the outcome. That's basically the thing. But maybe he has forgotten. You know, he did exactly the same thing to Amici, because he was the chief of staff to Amici when Amici now decided to maybe, you know, nominate him. They went, you know, like their separate ways because of outside influence, which is basically the same thing that is happening at the moment. Like I said, there can't be two governors in one state at the same time. If you are talking about your structure, well, nobody is saying you cannot run your structure, but then you must understand the fact that the governor is also there, and then he is not going to leave you just to decide his fate, when in actual sense he can also, you know, try and come up with his own structure. If maybe in the beginning you brought him, you use your own structure to deliver his election, he will want to be independent, which is natural. And but what I don't understand is the fact that they deny it today, and then you know, they also acknowledge that the fact that yes, it's there. So I like the speed with which the president intervened, because honestly, I wouldn't want to see a situation whereby a minister that is far away in Abuja, you know, will be having issues with a state governor to the extent that you know, yeah, and things can go haywire. So Wike should respect the fact that Fubara is now the governor in Rivers.
Also, the same thing is playing out in Edo State now. We thought that the confusion or the conflict between the governor and the deputy governor has been resolved, but we're seeing the latest development now. And that brings us also to, you know, you agree that there's something happening, there's something brewing, and somebody is saying that, hey, there's nothing. That's what happened between Obaseki and Shuaibu in the first place, until later when it got heated, before we knew that, yes, there was something happening. What would you say to that?
Well, sadly, Obaseki came out to acknowledge the fact that his deputy has apologized and he has accepted that apology. But here he is, continuing with all the feud. Honestly, I don't see how this will help the cause of governance. If you are talking about leading a state, there are so many things that you need to do. But just fighting your deputy, who before, what he doesn't understand is the fact that this man can become the governor tomorrow. Nobody knows what will happen. You can be impeached, you can be indisposed. So many things can happen that can make him the governor tomorrow. In fact, he can even go on his own, contest election, and then win. So what happens after that?
We saw the Ruto example.
So that's one of the things that our politicians should be particular about. Forget about the fact that he's trying to be his own person. He's a human being.
That's right.
Just like you did in your own time. Allow him to also try his own.
All right. Course. Yesterday, the president was talking tough in ministerial retreat. One would have even thought that that retreat should have happened much earlier than now. We have seen actions from some ministers, but others are still struggling to find their feet clearly from the assignments they have been given. But we have seen this kind of retreats before. What do you make of the president's charge, to the ministers by telling them you either ship up or we ship you out and all that? Do you think this time the situation will be different?
Well, I hope it will be different because it's expected once you are given an opportunity to serve as a minister or in whichever capacity, you are at the mercy of the president. Even if you are performing, the president can wake up tomorrow and say, no, I'm not satisfied with what you are doing, so you have to give that opportunity to another person so that we also see what he can do. And so many people will say the president is trying to make the office of Hadiza Bala Usman a very powerful one. Yeah, because if she is in charge of the score that the president will have to work with in the end of everything.
You don't want to be in a bad book.
So you wouldn't want to be in her bad book. So, but I think this is given, even if it is in a game of football. If you are not playing to the instruction of the coach, you are likely to be substituted and somebody injected into the game so that maybe the idea that the coach has, will now continue to flourish on the pitch. But for the ministers, let them also remember, even without the president coming out to say it, there are so many things that we are now associating with ministers who have made their marks. Like, we're still talking about El Rufai buses in Abuja. So many things. If you are able to make your own mark, it's not for the president, it's for your own good. So you don't know, probably you may be in the race to become the president in the next, 2-3 dispensations. So honestly, even without the president coming out to warn you that you need to perform or you leave the cabinet, you should be on your own trying to do that.
Exactly.
Interesting recommendations there from our guest analyst. I want to thank you very much for finding time to be in the studio. And he has said it, you should be able to self-evaluate maybe midway into this administration. And we want to see where ministers can even come out and say, hey, because we have failed, we are living on our own.
That's going to be a first.
Yeah.